Hey, it's Don Skaggs again with Empowered Inventing, the one place where we try to help you help other people by taking your great innovation, the right opportunity, mixing that with sound wisdom so you can turn them into real things like products and businesses. Now, if you're looking for good information beyond this video, courses, coaching, and more, check us out at empoweredinventing.com. Now, today I want to talk to you a little bit about an inventor that you've probably never heard of. I want you to meet Richard James. Richard James was a naval engineer that you've probably never heard of, like I said, but he invented something that you might, most likely rather, have heard of, and that's called the Slinky. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. This one's kind of a smaller Slinky. Anyway, this is the product that he invented. And he invented it quite by accident. In 1943, he was trying to develop, now remember he was a naval engineer, so he was working on Navy ships. So he was trying to develop a means for suspending shipboard instruments on battleships. He was trying to do that, and then some of his samples of his springs fell off of a shelf on the boat, I guess, or somewhere, and started just walking. You know how the Slinky does, how the Slinky, well, I'm sure I couldn't make it happen today on this video, but I can't even get it to go over. Look at that. There we go. That's sort of good. So he's trying to do that, and he watched him. He said, well, you know, they kind of walk. That's kind of neat. That's kind of cool. So he takes him home, shows him to his wife, and he says, you know what? I think we can make a toy out of this, a child's toy. And the rest is history. By the way, in case you didn't know, August 30th is National Slinky Day. I didn't know that. What I thought was really interesting about this is, you know, that there is a James Spring and Wire company that is still in business today. And they talk about their founder, the inventor of the Slinky. So they still sell springs. So that came out of it as well as the Slinky. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting little tidbit on Mr. James. But what can we learn from all this today as inventors and entrepreneurs? Well, number one, first and foremost, you know, A doesn't always lead you to B, and then to C, and then to D. Things usually, especially in the inventive creation world, things do not go in a procession, one to the next one to the next one. Sometimes you're doing this. You ever see my logo? It's the light bulb with the lines going through it. And that's because this is what success looks like. You're going back and forth, and then finally you get out to success. And that's what happened with James. You know, what if he had seen that and he thought, well, wasn't that a cool toy? Well, that's not what I'm working on right now. I'm focused on these this naval ship system, this system to suspend these instruments on naval ships. I don't have time for children's toys. Imagine missing out on this opportunity just because it wasn't your main original focus. Now that's a good lesson we can learn from that. Sometimes, now you don't want to go off in a million different directions, but sometimes you can find something that's off the wall. Don't dismiss the off the wall accidental creations. Sometimes it's these accidental creations that really become something. Those samples that fell off the shelf and then walked away on their own. That's what happened with the Slinky. So sometimes that you want to pay attention to that. So another thing, test the small before you get to the big. Now you hear me say this a lot, and that's you don't want to just go. Did they go out and spend, you know, $1 million and get a factory and just produce millions of these things right off the bat before they even knew they had a market? No, they made 400 of these things, 400. And then convinced, and I imagine it took some convincing, Gimbals, which was a store in Philadelphia, to carry this toy for Christmas in 1945. And they displayed it on a ramp, which I thought was kind of neat. You put it on a ramp and then the kids see it walk by itself. Ooh, isn't that cool? They had a wow moment. And all of their stock, every one they made, sold out in 90 minutes. That's when they knew they were onto something. So test, if you can test something small before you get to the big, and what I mean by the big is the big expenses, the big time, that could be wasted. What if they didn't sell one? You see, they didn't know that, so they made 400. 72 years later, over 300 million Slinkies have been sold, including this one. So, sometimes you got to test it, but you want to test it small. All the times you want to test it anywhere, anytime you can. Another thing is sometimes you have to let other people's talent shine, because it was Richard's wife, Betty James, was the genius behind the name Slinky. She looked up all these different names and all these words that meant different things. She said, Slinky would be a really, really neat name for this. Now, and not to throw shade at you engineers, because you guys, I love you guys. You all are great. You're great doing what you do. But can you imagine an engineer trying to come up with a name? Sometimes that's just not your guys' wheelhouse. I'm thinking, we shall call it helical spring toy. Yes, that's right, children. You'll want this because it's helical. No, we called it a Slinky. It sounds more fun. But sometimes, maybe we're not good at naming something. Maybe we're not good at the engineering part. Maybe we're not good at one other part of it. And you want to let other people's talent shine that are in your circle, that are in your world, that you're working with to get something off the ground. So let other people's talent shine, especially if they're better at it than you. Be sure and recognize that. Recognize where your wheelhouse kind of stops and other people start, and then say, oh yeah, I want to use that, because I know I'm going to trust that, because I know they do a better job at that than I do. So lastly, keep it simple. This was actually a quote from Betty James. She said, he said she, one of these media interviews one time they had with her, and they said, "Why do you think this was so successful?" And her answer was, "Children love simple things." And there's a lot of truth in that. Sometimes it's not just kids either. Things don't have to be complicated. Don't overcomplicate your invention, your idea, your product, your startup even. Because you can put too many bells and whistles, and number one, you can just confuse people, and maybe they don't like this one little bell or this one little whistle, and they just dismiss it. If you keep it simple, this is why they call it the MVP, the minimum viable product that you start out with, because you don't know what people are going to want. You think you do. You've got some assumptions, but if you put 1,000 little doohickeys on something, then that may just turn somebody off. But if you make it really, really simple, elegantly simple, either they'll love it like that, or they'll say, well, I really like that, but if you added this, and that's when you start doing a lot of the add-ons. So anyway, I hope this was helpful for you. Again, I'm Don Skaggs. This is Empowered Inventing TV. Be sure and like, subscribe. If you know somebody that this could help, be sure and share it with them. If you're looking for a deeper dive, if you're looking for courses or coaching or more, check us out at empoweredinventing.com, and I will look to see you at the next meeting, workshop, maybe one of our online classes, or on the next video.